Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're live now. This is going to be another important talk where we just kind of cut through the BS that we're being sold and
Oh,
recognize how much danger we're looking at. Again, with Dr. Yamicia Connor and my good friend Evie Bateman. We're going to talk about how the conservatives are constructing these just horrific healthcare outcomes. And it's not an accident. This is by design. They're going to obliterate women and children unless we start demanding action, we stop reaching out to them, and we start demanding a little bit of decent treatment. Dr. Jamicha, why don't you start off, talk about yourself, and we'll just get into it.
sounds great. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Yamicia Connor. I am an OBGYN. You might hear some kids in the background. I just heard my twins running up. They know I'm
Love it.
cute. Like,
I love kids in the background.
mom's doing something. I am the founder and CEO of a medical company called Diosada. We are focused on improving obstetrical and gynecological outcomes. And we focus in on obstetrical emergencies and how best to support women. But we do a lot of other stuff kind of outside of that because, as you know, you're aware, most of your healthcare is dictated not by your physician, but everything else around you, right? And so that's why we've developed the Labor Collective to try to have presence in the everything else around you.
Perfect. Evie?
I'm Evie Bateman, and I usually write a lot of controversial things. I live in the shadows and bring them to the light. So
Oh,
um,
man.
I
Yeah.
talk a lot about feminist cultural criticisms, political and religious accountability, progressive electoral politics. Basically, whatever needs dragging into the light. That's kind of where I live. Um, Walter had asked me to be a part of this because this is something where it's kind of, as a woman myself and navigating the healthcare system and having children, and I, had a hysterectomy when I was 33 years old, and how I had to fight so hard for that hysterectomy because I wasn't at the age that they wanted to give it to me, regardless of all the pain that I had been in. This is something where I was like, I would love to be a part of this live because anytime I have an opportunity to listen to the experts and the people that are, that know what they're talking about, and that this is something, that they can educate me on, I'm all ears. So I'm so happy to meet you, Jamija. Did
Yeah,
you say your name?
likewise. Jamesia.
Yamicia?
Jamicia.
Yamicia.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Jamesia.
Okay.
No, likewise. I think there's OBGYN is not that complicated. And so much of what we try to remind people is, the number one expert in their own body is the woman herself,
Yes.
right? You are an expert in that, and you have an infinite amount more knowledge. And so, I mean that if physicians aren't recognizing that, then that's a failure on the profession.
Mm.
Because our books, did they might not have they didn't consult your body, right?
Mhm.
I always tell patients, I bel I underst I believe that you have this symptom. I might not understand it, and I think that's something that makes a lot of physicians uncomfortable if they can't, connect the dots. Um, but my
Yeah.
job is to try to give it any answers until we do, right? And that might
Yes.
Mhm.
mean we need to go see someone else. That might mean we need to transfer you to a bigger hospital. That might mean I need to do some reading. But yeah, so I always, you are an expert in, you know, I tell people that 50% of what I learned about childbirth was in having my own children.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't learn in the book, right? So much of the stuff I do on counseling on rounds is when I'm talking about breastfeeding, I'm giving like just from my own breastfeeding experience.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
there's nothing as rich as living something.
That reminds me of a story I'd read too, where this poor woman, she had all these health issues. She ended up having to lose 70 pounds because the doctors kept telling her it was weight related. So she lost the weight just so the doctors would stop. It's like, I'm still sick. And it's just like things like that where they refuse to do that. It's like we're supposed to have a scientific community. And I think, it's the influence of money again, where they want these outcomes rather than for the people. But I was talking with Evie before we got started, and I kind of was curious about your experiences, Dr. Connor, because I know when I went in, I just was writing a story for my family. Like I'm writing this kind of memoir, like so they know. And I was going through like the birth, and I went in, I took my wife in, I was with all the appointments, and I get the sense in my life sometimes when something is happening that aren't used to seeing, right? Because I was
Mhm.
there, and I remember just the way the doctors and nurses were looking at me was like it was strange, and it's like I waited until the our daughter got born, and I just burst into tears, like all that stress, like you can't control. I really hate those situations where I'm not the one who has to endure this. So I just burst into tears, and the doctor just looked at me, and I just was from your experience, without getting into patient privilege, but like, is it super unusual to have the men even participate in being there for the birth, or you are getting that's an interesting reaction right there. But what is your response to that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I always tell people you should never go to the doctor alone.
Mhm.
Like, if you can help it, especially if it's for a serious problem, um, for a lot of, really practical reasons, but also, I think you get better care when you have someone there to advocate for you. Doctors are humans, right? You're working in a human-based system, and, um, if you have someone there, no one's gonna take care of you as well as the people who love you.
Yeah. Well,
It's just the honest truth. Go ahead.
I meant men being disinterested or not participating, and our society shields them, like they sit out.
Oh, oh. Oh, yeah, there are a lot of men who are not disinterested who are disinterested. Yeah,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that happens a lot, and that creates a real care issue, because I can do a lot for you in the hospital, but, I mean, what are you in the hospital for 24 hours, 48 hours?
Yeah.
Like, no real problem gets solved that quickly, and that's the place where I think the hospital and society has really failed, is
Yeah.
we just put people back out into the same situation
Yes.
over and over and over again.
Well, and men are kinda shielded by all the things that women have to endure, like, not even having, mature conversations about menstruation, like, men just don't want any part of this, and it's like
Mhm.
opening it up where we just have these open conversations. I know, Evie, though, you have some comments on that too, so I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, I mean, I kind of had good experiences and bad experiences with my kids. I had, my firstborn, it felt like everybody was involved. Like my mom was there, my dad was there, my husband was there, his parents were there. It was like a family event when I had my son. But then my second son was born, and I realized how kind of overwhelming it was to have everybody there, and, I just wanted a couple of people there, um, but nonetheless, I mean, they were pretty supportive. If it wasn't, my husband being supportive, it was, my mom or my mother-in-law or somebody was there supporting me. But my third baby, my husband, brought the PlayStation, and I labored while he played video games, and then brought the board game, and him and my other kids played, Monopoly while I was laboring. And um, I felt, and it was at a different hospital too. So the hospital that I had my first two at, it actually was torn down, and they rebuilt the hospital somewhere else. And so I went to a bigger hospital about 20 minutes away from where I lived. And I did notice there was a difference in care between the two hospitals. One was a small town hospital where, everybody, we used to, my pediatrician when I was a kid used to do house calls. So it was just different. But being in the bigger area where I had my third child, it felt very, kind of, the doctors were involved, the nurses were involved. And, I think because it wasn't my first baby, it was my third baby. I think some of my grievances were minimized a little, like I had gotten a couple of, rolling the eyes, like, when I would say, this is hurting, and I would ask for, you know, some comfort measures during the labor and delivery, and I would kind of get like eye rolls, or, I get like these smart remarks. And knowing the mouth that I have on me, it didn't pan out very well. So I would, yell back at them, and I'd kind of call them to the carpet whenever they would do things like that. So it was a different experience. Didn't really, um, I didn't like it at all. But then, just in, normal healthcare, I had gotten a uh, interthecal injection,
Mhm.
and it, I guess, poked through, and I was leaking spinal fluid, and I had a horrible headache for like 11 days. 11 days they made me
Yeah.
wait. They were like, just lay flat. So I had to breastfeed laying on the floor. I had to, and I couldn't change diapers. I couldn't, don't do any of that stuff because I had to lay flat on the floor. And it never went away. And then finally, on the 11th day, I called the hospital. And I was like, this headache isn't going away. It's just getting worse. And, they had me come in and they did like that blood patch where they took
Mhm.
the blood from my wrist and put it in my
Right,
back.
right.
And as they were pushing that blood in, my headache just went away as they were
Mhm.
pushing the blood in. It was
Wow.
so instant. And I thought to myself, why the hell did they
Yeah.
Did you
make
have
me
to
wait
start?
11 days with a newborn? I had a
Right,
newborn to take care of. So
right.
yeah, like those kind of healthcare issues, I feel they wait too long. Um, when you're having these problems, and the fact that, I they suspected I had endometriosis when I was 17 and I was 33 before they would even consider giving me a hysterectomy. I just don't understand why it takes so long when it's, this is something
Mm.
that you've had years and so many hours to think about, and
Mhm.
what's best for you, and then they're still just kind of, you know making you plug along when you're in pain and doing those things.
Dr. Connor, you have a response? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I mean, OB/GYN is a very paternalistic culture. I mean, it's very
Mhm.
conservative. Uh, you know, uh, it's female dominated, but male men are the leaders. It's by far the. My husband made a joke when I was matching into OB/GYN. He's like, "Oh, if I want to go to the top of a, if you want to go to like the top of a field, go into OB/GYN if you're a man, right? Because all the heads of
Wow.
departments
Yeah.
are men, right? Like all the people who sit on the board.
Mhm.
So it's still very much like that. I mean, there's a lot of women in the room, but the people who make the rules. And I think Black women have faced this forever, right?
Yeah.
Is the whole field of midwifery is like they were like the victims of this firsthand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For millennia, midwives delivered babies, and then one day they couldn't, and we're now still unwinding the consequences of that. And we know that like when you have a midwife facilitate a normal vaginal delivery, that patient does better, right?
Yeah.
Just the data is very clear, right? When you have these, women delivering in these low risk settings, who don't need, right? There's obviously like a time and a place for an obstetrician, of course, there is. But um, I think the the field it was built on the field was built on a culture of manipulation, right?
Mm.
If you just look at the history of our field, it was
Yeah.
a women. It was, even like a lot of the, even a lot of laws about because of the AMA, right? Is because of
Mhm.
OBGYNs. So the same thing that's like biting us in the ass now,
Yeah.
we put it into motion.
Well, and also the deliberate suppression right now of how these anti-abortion laws are causing women to die is something that we
Yeah.
just need to draw attention to. And the fact that it's frustrating to me. I mean, I'm sure it's more frustrating to you, but all these, we're talking about this pain that people have to endure, but there are also these consequences of death, the needless death that happens because we have indifferent men, not just in the field, but in throughout our whole society. Like this idea that the man stands outside the delivery room smoking a cigar. It's like that changed my life being in that delivery room, and the doctor had me cut the cord. It's like that's symbolic, but it's like, geez, and it's like you're looking at this reality of this, and it's just, I mean, that's a fraction of what my poor wife had to endure, but I was at least
Mhm.
there, and at least that it like makes you turn over to the fact that yes, you know your body better than I do. And it's like so
Mhm.
much of our society is designed to deprive women of their agency, turn it over to indifferent men, and then protect these men when they make these horrific decisions that cause women to suffer and die, even though we have the medicine and we have the procedures to prevent these deaths. But yeah, our purpose today was to talk about what's coming in the next 4 or 5 years, and just a quick overview of that again for the people that haven't seen it before.
I mean, it's here. It's not coming.
Mhm.
It's here. You know, the we have a series now, and the reason that we chose to do, we call it the quiet dismantling, is so much of what the government's able to do doesn't require any vote, right? It doesn't require anyone really. It's through a lot of legal maneuvers, and it's very clear. Like if you want to get rid of something, what do? Right? You cut the money,
Mhm.
you get rid of the people, you cause distraction somewhere else, and then before you know it, the whole system is gone. And that's what's happening in women's health, and I just wanna remind everyone, you know, we are starting at, we sent out, like, a really angry post the other day, or my
Good.
version of angry, at least. It's we are paying Maserati prices and driving off in a Corolla.
Yep. Yeah,
I mean, that's it, like, everyone should realize you
100%.
are paying Maserati prices, and in no other place in in your life would you accept that, right? If you
Yeah.
paid for something, you expect to get it.
Yeah.
But we pay the most, we do the worst, and that
Mhm.
is our baseline. And in that climate, we have had funding kind of eviscerated from all parts of healthcare. The
Mhm.
worst impacted were reproductive health, but not it's not limited to that. Um, you know, Huge impacts on mental health and funding there in a society that already cannot find people sufficient providers, where there's an epidemic
Mhm.
of loneliness, where there's an epidemic of depression and anxiety happening younger and younger to children, and we cut the funding for that. So there's just all these things, and I have just not to sound conspiratorial, but I I have started to, ask myself the question of who benefits when they have a sick society? Because when you have, because what's the thing that, like, gets you off your game, right? For everyone. You have a family member who's sick, right? Someone in your
Mhm.
family's sick, your mother's sick, your father's sick, your kids are sick, your husband's sick, and it's completely disorienting, right? You can't care about anything else. You can't care about politics. You can't care about what's happening
Mhm.
abroad. You don't care about the laws, right? You care about what? You care about making sure they have their medication, going to their doctor's appointment, because it becomes like a full-time
Yeah.
job, right?
Yeah.
To just manage that, right? A sick society is a society that's really easy to control.
Yes.
And
Yes.
obviously, like, how do you prove this? I can't prove that, but it's just like who benefits from this?
Yeah.
And only the people who want to who are doing these things behind the scenes. That's the only person who's winning.
Yeah. It fits all
Mhm.
the evidence. And if you're desperate for the job, you aren't going to complain if they mistreat you at that job either. That's the other
Exactly.
thing.
Yep.
And you'll take
Exactly.
less than your laborer's work because you're so up against the wall. So just
Exactly.
land of the free, not anymore. But Evie, I'm sure you have something to add too.
I mean, yeah, I have so many things that I like. I want you to have the questions to all, or the answers to all of my questions, so we can solve the world's problems right now. But I know, like, just looking back in history and just how everything is, I always go back to, we always have to remember that America is the house that white supremacy built. And every single system in this country derives from that source of control. And I just don't know, we know what we need to do. We know we have the answers. We know what we need to do, but we have all of these roadblocks, that white supremacy that is baked into these systems, that it's just so hard to get around, and I'm the kind of person where if I complain about something, I want to come to the table with a solution as well. And it's gotten to the point now where I feel like I'm doing more complaining and not enough solutioning. Because I'm, all the solutions that I've tried to kind of break through these barriers and to try to reach people and to try to say, hey, there's this thing over here happening, and this is what we need to do to try and fix it. And everybody is just so broke and scared and down. And, like even just my daughter the other day had to call the ambulance and she lives, halfway across the country. She goes to school halfway across the country. So it's not like we were just a car drive away. She's all by herself. She had to call an ambulance because she had a cyst burst. And she had this excruciating pain. She didn't know what the heck was happening. So we just told her, we said, yeah, call the ambulance, just whatever. And she's like, well, I can't afford it. And we said, don't worry about the money right now. Just call the ambulance. You need to get there.
Yeah.
And it was a $10,000 bill.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we do have insurance. So we didn't have to pay the full 10 grand, but we still had to pay a lot of money for that. And when they're keeping us in this constant cycle of depravity and just desperation. And I don't know, like working in this field and seeing this male dominated field, knowing that, it's just another white supremacist system. How do we get past these barriers so we can actually start getting the women and children the care that they need without feeling like we're one accident away from homelessness or, taking food off the table? And, I don't want to say the R word, but revolution. Like I'm, I don't want, my FBI agent is watching me. Yeah, I just said it.
Hey, buddy.
Well, there's different types of revolution, and I think I think the midterms are is the first battle, right?
And the
I think
primaries.
people should, or the primaries. Sorry. The people need to see it that way. Like and this is historical. Before guns come out, I mean, it's always politics, right? It's always, so this is, I had someone who commented on one of my posts, like, what is, what vision of the future, is there to like aspire to? And, I just want people to take a step back, and just recognize it can get a lot worse.
Yeah.
So
my son says the
that's
same
the
thing
first
though.
step. Yeah.
My son is 25 years old and he says the same thing. He's just like, all this stuff that you guys told us to do, all, like go to college, do this, do that. He's like, it's all crap. It's all
crap.
a lie. And none of this, like he's like, I'll never buy a house if we keep going on this road. I'll never, like he wants to have kids. He wants to be a parent someday. And he's like, I just don't see that happening in my future. And that is so heartbreaking.
Well, the lie is the price. The education is good, but the price is the lie. And I think what you were saying before too, Evie, it's just recognizing the problem is part of the resistance. And we just do have to open our, because there's all these things we've been conditioned through this abuse system to just not talk about. And we just suppress all that things. And it's so important to have these conversations because it's like too many men just don't have these honest conversations about the torture that women are subjected to in our country.
Right.
They just absent themselves. They expect their wives to drive themselves to these. That was common. I got the real sense that I was the exception here. It's just like, I don't feel that I did enough, but I was better than 99% of the fathers out there. And just being there and watching that agony of birth. And it just changes you where it's like, we shouldn't be having men who have never been in that room writing legislation. Because and then just the denials, like we're not supposed to, because I'm just so tired of these people they call themselves pro-life, and they're denying it's a humanitarian crisis. It's a human right. It's a crime against humanity to deprive women of reproductive health care. And we tolerate that as like a political viewpoint. And that's bullshit. That has to change. That's the start. That's one of the starting points. Because because then they suppress all the data that shows when they deny it or when they suppress it. There's another thing you were writing about. We have these outcomes where women are forced into relationships with abusive partners. That's another thing. And just the death and the suffering for the children. And then you have mothers who, because they're deprived of an abortion, maybe they already had 3 kids and they die. Now you've got kids that are orphans. And just none of this is in the public dialogue at all. So yeah, it's important to just bring out the problems first. That's the first step. Go ahead, Dr. Connor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first thing is, it just starts with getting out good information.
Yes.
I think that is the first step, and that means, yes, supporting things like this, but also people have to bring it into their real lives.
Mhm.
You have to bring you ha- if you have to talk to that uncle.
Oh yeah.
You need to find ways of bringing this into conversation because people have to know. Because honestly, a lot of people just don't know because they're so caught up in
Yeah.
the tomorrow, then,
Distractions.
the grind of it all, and that's the
Mhm.
oppressive mechanism at work, right? You keep
Mhm.
people on their grind, and what they can't they can't fight it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the first thing, that we as, like, the collective, we have to help the people in our lives, and you're not responsible for the world, right? You're responsible for a
Mhm.
very small section of it.
Mhm.
And if enough people take on that
Yes.
responsibility, I think I mean, that's how revolutions happen. That's how change
Yeah.
happens, right? And it has happened before. It's happened before in this country, right? I
Mhm.
mean, people who are alive. I mean, the civil rights. We haven't had civil rights for that long.
Yeah.
You
Ruby
know, I
Bridges is what, 75? Yeah.
yeah, like, I mean, the
Mhm.
people are still alive who know who were doing this fight. And I think, every generation has their challenge, and then this is just ours. And I think that, your son is right. Like, if we keep letting it
Mhm.
go down this way, he will not be able to have those things. That is
Yeah.
just a fact. And not sugarcoating it or gaslighting it, but at least for people like in our demographic, this is our fight. This is the fight of our
Yes.
generation.
Yes. I always
Yeah.
tell people, have these conversations first with the people you trust. Practice
Mhm.
them there. You don't have to convince people right away. Bring your community together, the people that you kind of depend on and you take for granted. That's where our focus has to be. And we have to rouse everybody and tell them and assure them you can be enraged by what's happening because women and children are going to be obliterated by what conservatives have done. They're going to be
Yes.
obliterated, and they're being obliterated already. But go ahead, Evie.
Yeah, and there's a Substack creator on here right now. They go by Your Weirdo Friend.
Mm,
I'm actually gonna be meeting with them on Friday, but
I've talked to them a lot.
they just wrote this amazing, article. It's called The Daisy Chain, and it talks about, bringing community together and having those conversations and doing that kinda thing. So, I've already restacked it. I was like, "Everybody needs to read this," because I'm this is where I'm kind of at too, is, I went no contact with every single person I knew 10 years ago. And I'm just now starting to build community back up again. I've kind of held people at a distance for, the last decade.
Mhm.
So now, because I've been outside of the box and I'm, looking in, I'm starting to see that, oh, wow, nobody has a village. It's not just me. Like,
Mhm.
nobody has the village. We need to
Yeah.
start getting our villages back. So I think, community building, these are the conversations that have to take place in that community building process, because if people just understood what we're up against, and and not just people in general, but especially, black and brown people, what they're up against, and how we can be legit true allies to the black and brown voices and the disability community. I mean, it's just, there's so many facets of this conversation that we can't leave a single one out. They all, we all have to come together in order to fight this
Yeah.
whole oppressive system. And I don't know, I'm just like, sometimes when I go off on a tire, I start feeling like I'm doing like revolutions.
Well, we have to take control of our own thoughts. Go ahead, Evie. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt.
Yeah. No, but,
Well, I was
and it's,
just Please go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I,
Dr. Counter, go ahead.
I think I feed off of
Oh,
Walter's energy sometimes, so I'll just sip it.
Well, I was just gonna say, as an aside, I mean, that's why we're building the codex, right?
Mhm.
And for people who might not know, we're building a platform, for independent voices and independent creators. And we have the first step is recognizing that the current systems that we all use, they are driving some of the problem. I mean, a lot of the problem. They're taking a
Yes.
problem and getting quite rich,
Yes.
because of it. I mean, they're the richest people in the world, right?
Mhm.
But those are decisions that we have made,
Yeah.
and we can unmake them. That's
Mhm.
kind of our main argument. Is this is by design, and on one hand, it's depressing, but on the other hand, it's empowering because that means we
Yeah.
can change it. None of this stuff is, like existential and, just the forces at will. There are people
Right.
just like the three of us who decided, um,
Mhm.
we're going to make a difference, and more and more and more people, um, uh, pile on to that. And I think that we we have to be as furious,
Yes.
and as ruthless as they have been in getting what they want, in
Yep.
getting and achieving our goals. And because they worked at this for years. I mean,
Yeah.
they put in the work. But we can say that.
Mhm.
They put in the work. They put in decades and decades of looking, honestly, quite crazy.
Yeah.
10 years ago, 20 years ago, some of the things that are happening now, people would have they would have been like, that's not possible. And they
Mhm.
were like, "Okay, well, we'll
I
see."
think once people understand too, and I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that governments just don't plan for like the next year. They have 50, 100, 500-year plans sometimes.
Yeah.
They like these are all things that they're playing the long game all the
Right.
time. And anytime things that, we start going through changes and we start going through things, I always think to myself, we're kind of like 5 to 10 years behind what the owners of the earth, I call them the owners of the earth because they have all the money, they're
Yeah.
hoarding all the wealth. But I feel like they kind of start implementing this stuff because they have thought this through for a very, very long time, and it's not just
Mhm.
our government, it's all governments, they're in it for the long game and we're just here for the ride.
Yeah.
But we can change our minds. And that's the thing is, when I was younger, I always felt like, I would hear this saying like, you know, stand for something or kneel for everything. And for
Mhm.
some reason that really like got in my head. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to stand on this, I got to stand on it. And I'm not allowed to change my mind. But then as I got older, I realized, it's bullshit. You can change your mind. Like changing your mind is actually imperative in these changes
Right.
right now. You have to be able to look at a situation and say, hey, that might have worked,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
when
Outdated.
when I was in that mindset, but now things have changed rapidly and we have to change our minds about a lot of things. And we have to really, like right now, I cannot believe that obstetrics and gynecology, I can't believe that's a male dominated field. That is wild
Leadership.
to me.
Yeah, they're
Leadership.
they're
Yeah.
they're yeah, yeah,
I
by
can't
far.
believe that the
Mhm.
leadership is
Well,
male dominated.
that whole
God bless.
field, the guy who came up with it, he was performing surgeries on black women without any kind of,
Yeah.
it is just because that was from the era of just the cruelty of that. And that guy, there's still
Right.
statues of that guy in
Mhm.
places.
Yeah.
And these are the things, those statues gotta come down, friends. And
Yes,
it's
they
like,
do.
and the revolution is in our own minds. It's like, we gotta break down these walls. It's like, if you've
Yeah.
got a grandma who is pro-life, you gotta make her cry. And you
Yeah.
gotta tell her that that's really what
Yes.
it is. You gotta ruin that relationship. You're never
Mhm.
seeing the kids again because you're
Yep.
voting for their death is what you're voting for. This is coming for everybody that we love.
Yep.
I've got daughters. I got a sophomore, and she's going to be getting the brunt of this. And it's just like,
Mhm.
and it's just right. The media capture is a big part of it, where they tell us,
Mhm.
silent. They could have this whole time, the entire Democratic Party. They all have platforms. They could have been going to hospitals, showing the outcome of this anti-human crisis, these crimes against humanity that the Supreme Court put through. They could be showing the evidence. They could be putting it on TV. They could be posting it on their socials. None of them
Mhm.
are doing that. They're indifferent. They could be doing the same thing with these concentration camps too. They're not doing that either. And so it is up to us, everybody. And because it's not in the media, so many people, they get lured into this idea of thinking it's not happening. That's the other reason why
Mhm.
we have to have these hard conversations. Force people to understand that people are being tortured to death and they're dying, and all these things are preventable. We have the medication, we have the procedures to prevent these deaths. It is a crime against humanity, and we are all complicit in this. If we remain silent, we are enablers of it. So,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
else do you have to add, Dr. Connor? I'm
Yeah.
sure you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just, I think storytelling is really important here. Like taking and this is where I think a lot of people can actually, come to the table and have a lot to contribute.
Mhm.
Because the forces that have allowed the conservative legal movement to be successful, those weren't legal forces. That was storytelling. That was all on the
Mhm.
Right.
social level. Like,
Yes.
how many people have you've heard some nonsense about like the woke agenda,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
like, oh, DEI was so too much, like it was so annoying. Just like people say, and I'm just like, where'd you hear that from?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like,
Or
where do you learn that?
anti-fascism is a bad thing. It's like
You
fascism
know,
is the bad thing.
yeah, like, so, tell me more about that, right? Like, let's help. And, those are we have to do our own version of the storytelling. We have
Oh.
to do our own version of telling people, like, what these deaths look like. Because if you
Yeah.
actually look at these women who are dying, what are their stories? You have, like, a 16-year-old, who came in, like, at 21 weeks pregnant, and she had been sent home time after time after time after time, and she had basically, an infected uterus, right? And
Mhm.
she died, right? An
Yeah.
agonizing death. Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine, like, what that feels like? Like, physically, what that feels like? You have endometriosis, right? Like, what that uterine,
Mhm.
that pelvic pain. Now imagine it's in a body that's dying, and you have
Yeah.
a super infection. I mean, that's an agonizing death. Right? Like, as an
Yeah.
OB/GYN, like, I can see what that looks like because I've seen
Mhm.
patients with that sort of pain. Um,
Yeah.
and we have to remember, the women who are dying from these situations, it's not about abortion, right? A lot of them didn't even
Mhm.
want an abortion. They had a legitimate pregnancy complication,
Yeah.
or they had a completed abortion and had a complication from that.
Yeah.
And so when do we decide that somebody who is, it's kind of like, if you have a gunshot wound, the trauma surgeon doesn't say they're not going to treat you because you might have a gun, right?
Right.
You might have committed a crime somewhere. They don't,
Mhm.
they don't say like, oh, well, I guess you just left to die. But that's what we were saying to women, right? You
Yeah.
might have committed an abortion, maybe. We don't even know, right? Because there's no way of actually knowing, right, if this is a miscarriage or an abortion, and I'm just gonna let
Mhm.
you die because of it. Like, what kind of nonsense is that?
Yeah.
It's just absurd, right? It's really absurd. And the reason that they are able to do this is 'cause a lot of these women are poor. A lot
Mhm.
of these women are already in the whole reason they're in this situation is they're in difficult situations, right? They're not in a position to like come out, and basically advocate for themselves and tell their story. And so
Mhm.
it's our responsibility to do that. It's our responsibility to carry those stories, in the work that we do.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, I have a personal story just from that. I mean, I wouldn't even be here right now if I didn't have my DNC after I had lost my pregnancy. And I think about that, and I think about how you know when people have the abortion talk, I think they all think that it's women using abortion as a form of birth control, and it's not. It's healthcare. When I got pregnant after I had a miscarriage between my first and my second babies. I was hemorrhaging. They sent me home. They said, it'll, expel on its own, and, just let us know when you pass it, blah, 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 blah. And I went home, and I started getting a fever, and I was cramping horribly, and I was bleeding like insane amounts of blood. And it just got to a point where I was lost all the color in my face. I had no color in my lips. And I drove myself back to the hospital, and I said, something's wrong. I just don't, is it supposed to be like this? Because I didn't know. I've never had,
God.
a miscarriage before. So I was like, is it supposed to be like this? And she said, absolutely not. And within an hour, I was in the OR having an
Yeah,
abortion.
yeah,
So, like, it saved my life, and I don't regret it a single bit. Like, it's just even when my husband was married to his he's widowed. She ended up passing away from glioblastoma, but she was pregnant with their son, who now I'm helping him raise. And he was only 26, she was 26 weeks along. And when they were in the emergency room, when she had her seizure from the tumor in her brain, the doctor said, which one are you going to save? And of course, he said, like, save my wife, because,
Mhm.
they have
Yeah.
4 other children, and, it was that he wanted to save the
Yeah.
wife. But thankfully, they were able to save both,
Yeah.
Wow.
and I mean, Derek's got an incredible story. And I just, every time I think about it, I just think about all the stuff that they went through. But, having that care, um, was imperative in that situation. And, they could have just let the baby die. They could have, I mean, there was many times where he almost died. He was so little, his skin was so, transparent or translucent. And, but it's like, in my situation, there was no saving that baby. I was only 14 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, save my life.
Yeah.
I'm
And I
bleeding
and
to
I
death.
and I
Save my life.
yeah, and I want people to also understand, there is no, medical situation where, um, you can really legitimately disconnect the baby from the mother. Um, uh, it is very often that what is in the best interest of the mother is in the best interest of the baby.
Right.
Um, and then there are some situations where functionally that's not a viable pregnancy, right? If you're
Mhm.
14 weeks and you're hemorrhaging, that pregnancy's gone,
Right.
right? Even if the baby might have a heartbeat, that pregnancy is, from a medical perspective, is no longer viable. The
Right.
only thing that you're asking yourself then, and this is why they, like, try to confuse people, the only question you're asking yourself, are you gonna let this woman die for nothing,
Right.
right? Because if you die, that 14-week pregnancy is not going anywhere.
Right.
I'll tell you that right now, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
And you've
I
got
mean, there's
women,
no
even just here in Texas, like, they're bleeding out in parking lots because they can't.
Yeah.
They're in the same situation that I was in, but doctors are afraid to give them care because they don't want to get sued, or they don't want. And it's like, I don't know. At some point, we just, like, we have to do the right thing, and the
Yes.
right thing would be to save that woman's life.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think from a medical perspective, I I I feel empathy for the doctors who are in that situation, but they know what they need to do. It's not a
Right.
medically complex situation. You have
Right.
malpractice. You
Hmm.
need to you need to get it done because and the other thing about for physicians, I'll tell them, you are they screwed you both ways, right? Because if you don't do
Hmm.
it, that's your
Yeah.
license, right?
Right.
So you need to do what you know is medically justified and document. And that's one of the things we try to help people with, like, and then document appropriately because you will be taken to court. And you need to document like you
Right.
understand that. But in no way does that remove your responsibility to the patient. I mean, we're
Right.
grown-ups, right? Like, doctors are grown-ups. You're grown-ups, you make a good living. I get it, it's hard. I'm in that same situation. I have things on the line. But, this is life, right? And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like, I'm not gonna let someone die
Yeah.
because I'm scared about my medical license. Like, I can't do
Hmm.
that, right? I lose my
Is there
license.
somewhere is there somewhere that doctors can go to get that support? Like, is there, like, a group or anything that's
I mean, our professional societies have really so the thing that also, the Swiss cheese model, right? In order for something to happen, a lot of things have to align, right?
Mhm.
And the profession itself is in a crisis. We just don't simply have enough bodies on the ground. It's been just decades of erosion, and then after COVID, and then now with the new reproductive rights restrictions, like, no, young physicians don't want to come and be OB-GYNs. Like, why
Right.
would you wanna do this?
Right.
When the practice of medicine can become a felony,
Yeah.
the stress, it's not even, like, will that happen to you? It's just the holding of that stress on a day-to-day basis, like, the moral injury of that, right? Of that, like, decision making. I had a patient, who had, again, pretty straightforward case. She had a septic pregnancy. They thought she had something else. They had her in the ICU for something else. No one had bothered to even investigate the uterus. I'm like, when you have a young woman who's septic for no cause, and pregnant,
Right.
first thing you got to investigate is the uterus. But eventually it got to me. Like I got the phone call. And I had a nurse who like, who told me, she's like, I don't believe in I don't believe in killing babies. And I'm like, good, because I don't either.
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
we're in alignment on that. Like I don't believe in,
Right.
why would I do this, right? If she has a septic pregnancy, that baby's already dead,
Mhm.
right?
You said something so important before too, the storytelling aspect of this, and we've allowed the conservatives to just run this story and condition us all that we're not supposed to contest it. And part of it comes from it's when you have to challenge somebody in public, it's always difficult. And because it's like, well, this is just an argument I'm trying to win, they're always aggressive and we back down. And we have to recognize our backing down, we have to stand up and protect our doctors. The same way we have to stand up and stop putting our members of our military in positions where they have to follow illegal orders, right? And we're getting to that point, I think, where people are recognizing they have to rise up. There's no protection in being quiet. And yeah, maybe
No, it's not.
it's like for me, I'm not going to have, complications in pregnancy. But it's like I'm worried that might happen to my daughter. God willing, it won't happen. Maybe it's this really unusual chance, but we have to stand up and ensure those things too, right? And if that means overcoming the tension you feel when you start talking to somebody who's spewing these conservative lies, and they are malicious lies. And I mean, you were reluctant before to say that this is their intent, but that's the only theory that matches all the data, right? Their intent is to hurt us. You don't dismantle the pandemic response team and tell all the people that they shouldn't follow any of the regulations unless you want to see everybody die and they already had a pandemic. We instantly had a pandemic the instant they dismantled the pandemic response team the first time, told us not to put on masks, told us not to trust vaccines. 1 million people died. We were only lucky that it wasn't more lethal. And it's like, that's what they're doing. At what point do we just take the blinders away and stop giving them the benefit of the doubt and recognize that literally every one of their actions is getting our people killed on every level? There's not one thing that they've done that made our life better in any possible way. And if it's uncomfortable to talk to somebody in your sphere, think how uncomfortable it is to bleed out in the parking lot of a hospital and use that to motivate you to say the things that need to be said. Because again, if we're not speaking out, we're enabling this. It has to be up to us. Our doctors have enough on their plate. We have to help our doctors so they have to worry about going to jail. And they're acting to save our lives because we're going to defend them, right? And we're going to vote to defend our doctors and all of our people.
Yeah, I mean, I think people just
Hallelujah.
and that's why I think those of us with options, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, I get it. Where everyone has stuff in life, right? But I'm one of them, right? I have a little bit more cushion. I have a comfortable home. I have a husband. I have, God, thank God, like everyone in my family is, healthy right now, right? I have the bandwidth, right? Of course I'm tired. Of course I want to do other things. Of course there's a million reasons why. But when push comes to shove, like I have all my basic needs met, right? And this is again, like, are we such cowards that we are going to leave because the problem isn't going to go away. That's the other thing. If we do not do something, we leave it to our children. And are you such a coward that you are going to do that? I don't care what you have going on. I don't care what meeting it is. I don't care your boss. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care of any of that. Right? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Are you going to leave this at your children's feet? Because it's not going away. This problem isn't going to go away. And that's when enough people with enough means and enough, because there's still a lot of money, there's still a lot of power, and there's still a lot of people who aren't in the game.
Just use
They're
it.
just sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this is concerning.
Because it hasn't affected them yet.
Yep.
Yeah, how can you say it? But until those people get up, we have a choice to make, right?
Yeah.
And we're making that choice every day, whether in our action, in our inaction. And we all have to, at the end of the day, like everyone has to be able to look at themselves in the mirror, right? Everyone has to be able to, if you believe in God, like meet your maker, right? And you have to be able to say, I did my part, right? And
yeah,
like the excuses don't matter then. And that's how, I think sometimes we make things so confusing and so complicated. Yeah, there's always
Yes.
SHIT out
Mhm.
there, right? Like, that's literally life.
Yeah.
Life is hard. Like my mom used to tell me, life is hard.
Mhm.
Right? But there are a few things that we have to just make a decision about.
Yeah.
And once you make a decision about it, and this is the comfort of the privilege that we have had, as Americans, that we have given away essentially, is that
Yeah.
we were privileged enough to not have to make those decisions, right? Everyone else
Right.
around the whole world understands this. This is not That's why they're looking at us like, "What's wrong with you guys?"
Yeah.
Like, we all
Mhm.
understand this. This is life, right? Bad stuff happens to people, and you have to make a decision, and this is just our turn.
Mhm.
Yep.
Absolutely. Edie?
Yep. I think that we're definitely a society that is stuck in apathy right now. And,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's how do we shake the cage and say like, hey, wake up. And again, it's a slow process. And I feel just in the last,
Yeah.
I
But
want
there
to
are
say
some big
year.
levers that we have that we haven't pulled. I
Yes.
mean, not to keep harping on this, but social media is not good for people's brains.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Yes.
this is a new sorry, I'm
That's
having a
fine. They're having a good time back there, I hope. Just glance out. That was a glance back. Yeah. It's like, is that fun or is something going on? Oh no, we lost her. She had to jump off camera for a second. But go ahead, Evie. Anything
Yeah, no,
else?
she's right though. Social media is a huge problem, and especially with our young people. And I will always go back to Dr. Porath's study that he did with technology and the brain development of these young people.
Yeah.
You know, Gen Z is the very first generation that is not more cognitively capable than the generation prior.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
because of the boom of technology. It's having technology in class, having these algorithm, you say it a
Yeah.
lot, this algorithm
Deprived of
driven.
choice. Yep. We don't have choice.
Yes. Yes.
And
And it's really messing with their mental health.
yes. And I've been telling people like a place like Substack, at least it gives you the option to subscribe to the creators you like, right?
Yeah.
That is, and it's still bad. I mean, it's because you
It'll
still,
still keep you in a bubble. Yes.
yes. But if you just have to notice that if you're doom scrolling all the time, you're allowing malicious forces to determine what you're looking at. I keep comparing it to the library.
Yeah.
Just go to the library. Look at all the possible books you can read because
Yeah.
you don't want a curated system where some nefarious force has curated all the things. Oh, to take that away from you, I wanted to look at what I'm
Yeah.
writing here. Oh, one of the things like a course of action that I've been doing lately, I wanted to get Dr. Connor to tell us what she wants us to do. So hopefully she gets the parent emergency handled soon when
Yeah.
she comes back. But one of the things I've just been doing to people has just been saying them, casually saying, it's like, yeah, because of
Mhm.
the choices the conservatives have made, we are going to run out of OBGYNs in the,
Yeah.
in the next few years. Just say it. And you just have to it's like, go look it up yourself. But we just
Yeah.
have to just start making that part of the conversation because, again, the nefarious forces have captured the media. They've captured social media. They are depriving us. The people in your sphere do not know how bad it is unless you are actively looking. And I find this too. There's all these people I follow on Substack. I go back into the real world, with people that don't know what's going on. And they're just like, do, 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 walking by.
Mhm.
We were kind of transitioning. I hope you got the emergency handle. I was
It's
just
fine. It was like a child's emergency, so they're fine.
okay. So I was just saying, I'm just activism and
There's a
tell
bump
us what
in
you
my
want us.
sock. Yeah.
Tell us what you want us to do. One of the things I've just been doing is mentioning just a very snippet of this. We're just saying, hey, people, we're going to run out of OBGYNs very soon. Like just in casual conversation. What are the things you want us to do to advocate for? What insight can you give us? How can we help you? We're at your service.
So everyone should be demanding where is their data, right? Just like a really simple thing. There is a agency that monitors pregnancy outcomes that just got quietly disbanded along with all of the
Oh boy.
CDC, right? Um,
Mhm.
you should be you pay for that. You pay for that with your taxes, right? Everyone's always like they want to pay less taxes, but what they want the government to be more efficient. You know what's the most inefficient thing? Paying for something and not getting it
Yeah.
because those
Mhm.
people are still getting paid right now.
Wow.
The office technically exists, right? But they're not allowed to do their jobs.
Yeah.
Bring the people back to do their jobs. We are the most dangerous country to have a baby. Full stop. And we decided in that climate that we were going to stop collecting the data on it.
Hiding it. The deliberate suppression of the evidence is what that is.
So if you care about anything about life, then it goes without saying that you need to collect the data on what's killing mothers and babies. That's step one.
Do you have different sources that people can go to find data? Because I know like there's a lot of independent, like even yourself doing independent studies. You know, where can we kind of direct people to get credible, good information?
That's so the information ecosystem is reorganizing because it really
Mhm.
was the CDC and the NIH for the world, right?
Yeah.
Did but what we're directing people to is um, other governments, so that we have a scaling system that we use to like basically rate data on so we collect all types of data and we'll present it, but the score in terms of like how trustworthy really depends on the source. And so things like WHO, there are a lot of Canadian data sources that we use a lot
Mhm.
in the UK. So kind of data sources from around the world. But you have to remember medical guidelines are that's regional, right?
Okay.
That's not a direct comparison, right? It's better than
Mhm.
nothing, of course. States also are independent. There are many things wrong about our country, but one of the things that actually is, there is, pros and cons. But one of the good things about you know, the way our country is organized, states have a lot of autonomy, right? And there are states, and this is where you have a lot of power. So that's the other thing to people.
Yes.
You might not have power at the White House, but you know what? You have a lot of power at the local level. I mean, you
Yes.
might be the only one.
Yeah.
You might literally be
Yeah.
the only voice. Like that is not out of the question. When we're talking about these small, and that's really how decisions get made. The things that impact your life aren't determined in Washington, right? They're determined like
Right.
in your neighborhood, right? And the people around you. And so understanding and teaching people about how government is structured, right? Because medical licenses, I mean, that licensing is state wide, right? The state gives you your
Mhm.
license. I'm not a doctor of the United States, right? I'm licensed to practice medicine in a specific state. And so those are the areas that you can really start impacting change immediately. And the other thing is, state officials, they don't have the basically the cover that national officials do, right? They don't have the budget, and they don't have the like the fame essentially. And so they're a lot more vulnerable to these realities. And so we are trying to get data as granular as possible. I want to tell you what's happening in Louisiana, right? We have a
Mhm.
map published in Louisiana. Essentially, there are no black OBGYN. So OBGYNs do not live where black people live, right? There are in almost every single black parish, there are just no OBGYNs at all.
Mm. Wow.
And that pattern just is you can see it across the country, right? When you start looking at the more granular level and start asking yourself, "Well, why is this happening?" Well, a state might be quote unquote fine, might have enough providers, right, to meet the minimum because there are minimums that are set, right? You need, I think it's like 32 for every 100,000, right? And so you might be able to meet that. But if all of them live in one city,
Mhm.
and that's how it is in many places throughout the country, right? They're literally all in one city. Like 60 of them live in one city, right? And then no blackouts everywhere else. And so what functionally that means is that person might as well be in New York, right? Like if she's 6 hours away from you, like functionally, like
Mhm.
that person doesn't exist, even though they count in the data set as
Mm.
as having a provider. And so that's what I advise people to do is start looking at the granular level, start looking at the, state level data, because they're the only ones left to fill the gap. And what you'll see, especially like with elections, like what has saved us with elections is that elections are run locally. right?
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
elections were national, we would be gone. Look at Congress, like, they're I mean, what are they
Yeah.
doing? Nothing. Right? Like, the people holding us together are people sitting in small offices right down the road from you. So,
Yeah.
go visit them. Go see how
Yes.
you can help. Like, these are things that you can do today. I am sure they're drowning and stuff. I am sure
Yeah.
if you talk to them, they'll find you something that you can do, and you just need to do your part, right? You don't need to solve the problem for every single person for in everything, right? Do pick your problem and just commit to it, because
Mhm.
there are many, right? Um, if it's the environment, go do the environment.
Yeah.
If it's trans right, go do that. If it's women's rights, go do that. If you want workplace, if you're a professional and you have a skill, well, what of that skill can you volunteer, right? Because we need everyone. And the failure, I think, of the Democratic Party is they have let all the local infrastructure just
Yeah.
collapse
Yes.
Yep.
completely.
Which offices in particular do you recommend we go and contact? Like, which city officials, doctors? What do you think?
Yeah, so I wouldn't talk to doctors, they won't know where to send you. I would talk to city officials. I we'll send you all a list.
Good. Awesome.
I'll send information, out. It depends on what what pick your poison, like
Yeah.
who is, but so many of these things also that dictate, people's lives and outcomes, a lot of them are not laws. They're like regulations, right?
Oh,
They're
Mhm.
essentially rules that someone has written down somewhere, right? And so those things can be changed.
okay.
Yep. Yes, they can be changed. I can't let's reiterate that. Everybody,
Yes.
things
Yes.
can be changed. We do not have to live like this. We do not have to
We
have
don't have to live
these.
like this. We don't
No.
Yes.
have to live like this.
And I
And
want.
the other point I wanna make, just last point on OBGYN providers, even if we solve the problem today, we are gonna be in this till the 2040s,
Yep.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We are in a real crunch, everyone,
Yeah.
and that's if we started it today, right? It takes someone, 12 years, right, minimum, to become an OBGYN. That's if they go straight through. You have to do 4 years of undergrad. You gotta do 4 years of medical school. You gotta do 4 years of residency, and then if you subspecialize, that could be another 3 years. You you are talking a full 2 decades of training,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and we have let that workforce completely collapse, and
Yep.
so we have to change. We have
Yes.
we are in a real crunch. It's something that keeps me up at night because, what happens is it's terrible for patients, but those of us in the workforce still,
Mhm.
have what is it like when it's a holiday and people are off? Or what is it like when, your
Yeah.
colleague is out sick with the flu? It sucks. Now imagine you have it on a professional level, right?
Mhm.
And that's causing so much burnout, and so many people are leaving the profession because of that. Because the people who are left, it's just gonna be more people are gonna come in sicker, they're gonna come in later, right? Because 'Cause they're
Mm.
losing their healthcare with Medicaid. There's gonna be more ambiguity. I tried calling, that situation I was telling you all about, I called our hospital our hospital, like, essentially, like, legal or ethics, or I was just like, "I wanna know how to document this appropriately because I need to do XYZ." They didn't know. They're like, "Wow, that's a terrible problem." I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Shouldn't you know how to
"Yeah,
do that?
should should shouldn't you be
Yeah.
telling?" I'm like, "Yeah, it is a terrible problem. I'm in it. Like,
Yeah.
I get the problem. How can you help me there?" And then they're like, "Well, we'll support you." I'm like, "Well, hmm."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's happening
crazy.
everywhere, right? You
Yeah.
think that so that's the other thing about medicine. You think medicine is this, like, really, or it's not. You have charge nurses, you have administrators, you have physicians
Mhm.
who are literally they're like, holding things together by sheer force of will. The
Yeah.
system is
Yep.
incredibly fragile.
And I want to just
Mhm.
reiterate to everybody here, these are the conversations we need to be having. So if you're on some sort of platform and they just want to complain about Plattner or whatever, and they don't want to force any kind of reasonable discourse into the national attention, they are distraction media. They're deliberately distracting
Mhm.
you from the problems that are going to be relevant either to you or somebody you care about. So everybody has to make this deliberate choice. We've allowed the media, and the media is a big part of this. The media actually, the fact that we've allowed media capture to happen, where everybody only worries about click rate. They give people what they think they want rather than what they need. And we need to be more deliberate about following and supporting the people that are giving you what we need, these important conversations that maybe people don't even want to hear about. You better listen to it, because this is the truth. That distraction media, it's all designed to control you. All those awful captured algorithms, the curated content that's not doing you any good. And you have to have these conversations with the people around you. We have to force it through. We have to establish ourselves. It's not about merit. This is the conversation of merit. We are being deliberately pushed off the table. We need to find our way back to the table, force our way there for the sake of humanity. Evie, any thoughts?
And, I've always said this too, is once you ring a bell, you can't unring it. So just getting the information out there, even if you don't think it's going to land, when I first started.
Again and again and again. Yeah. Over and over until it does land.
When I first started my Substack, I was writing these essays and, I was talking about a lot of things that people like to look away from. They, like, oh, we're not going to, it doesn't affect me, so I'm not going to look at that. But then all of a sudden they started landing and they started getting restacked and they started getting shared. And I was actually kind of blown away that, I thought, oh, nobody's ever going to read this stuff. And now a lot of people read it and it's landing because it's true. When you have a story, but you're purposefully omitting certain parts of the story to maintain this nice, clean narrative, I'll destroy the whole story. I'll be like, no, squash it. This is actually, have you taken this into consideration? Have you taken this into consideration? Even just off topic, but even just talking about the war in Iran right now with Hamas and Hezbollah, I always tell people, because they think Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist organizations. And I said, first of all, it is the people who win that get to determine who's a terrorist organization, because the United States has itself done horrific things that we could be labeled a terrorist organization. We just haven't had anybody beat us. But I was like, Hezbollah and Hamas are the resistance. Hezbollah was founded in 1982 as a resistance when Israel invaded them. So we would have done the same thing. If people invade us, we would have a resistance and we would be fighting them as well. So I think that omitting certain truths from stories, and even just Black history in this country is absolutely, I mean, 100% whitewashed and just stupid. I mean, I the things that I learned after I got out of the traditional PragerU-like, education system, and I started, reading and kind of going on my own and saying, okay, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to read this book. And I've had a lot of books recommended to me as well, thank goodness. But, just reading the other sides of the stories and the flip sides of the stories, and just how I didn't know anything about Black history until I started going out on my own. I didn't know anything about terrorist organizations and what they're, why they are the way that they are. It just never stop asking why. And I think people they get a story and they're like, okay with it. They're like, oh, well, this happened, and well, why do you believe that? Well, because my mom said, or because my teacher said. And it's like, well, why do they believe it? And this is the whole, when I was deconstructing religion as well, I just started going down rabbit holes and I'm like, why do I believe? Why does my parents believe? Why do they, and I just started asking questions, and you just cannot stop asking questions. Don't put yourself into a psychosis and drive yourself nuts. Take breaks, take water breaks, because it's a lot.
Well, find a community to validate you who has shared your experience.
But, I'm coming from somebody who I left my community, and I didn't have my community that I was a part of thought something completely different. And then I went out on my own and started truth seeking. I just started asking the questions why, and digging and digging and digging. And then I finally got to a point where I was like, oh my God, I knew nothing.
Yeah.
By
design.
And Yeah. And now that I know better, you got to do better too.
Yes.
You know, it's not one of these things where it's like, oh, well, yeah, you know, we were lied to and I learned this in school, but I'm not going to change anything about me.
Be
You know, you
mad.
have to, once you know better, you have to do better as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think keep saying the quiet parts out loud because, like I said, once you ring that bell, you can't unring it anymore. It's out
Yes.
there
People are
and
seeing.
it's going to land.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're a little over time. I know that Dr. Connor has a busy schedule, but please tell us your web pages and things where you want people to go and a last idea about what we can do to help.
Yeah, so I am the worst at doing this. I'm like, I was thinking about her comment.
Oh, yeah, no, it's
I'm like
great.
the worst. So we have, so you can follow us at laborcollective.com. We have a Substack. But exciting thing.
Could you spell
We're actually
Labora?
Oh, yes, Labor. So it's like LABORATIV. We need a simple. I'll put it in the chat. How about that? We need a simple thing.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put it, or actually, I'll have Aisha. I know she's out there somewhere. Put it into the chat. And we'll get everyone the links. I'm like the word. I should.
Okay.
Okay, next time I'm gonna prepare. But we have
It was a gotcha question. Yeah.
we have a few
There it
things
is.
coming up that I'm really excited about. We have a Substack, but we're opening up our like actual membership community. It took us a little while to get it off the ground, and so it runs off of Substack, and it's a space that lets me do two separate things. Right, one. There's just because of I'm a physician, like there are just certain things I can't say in public. And so it allows me to speak, more, honestly. I also will share like my family because I don't like putting my like kids out in social media, for obvious reasons. And then the other big thing is we are sitting on a tremendous amount of data. And we want to be able to share it to people. But again, because of the reason healthcare moves slow is there's a lot of validating steps. But we're going to start sharing it with our internal community. And I'm telling you, this stuff is like wild. It's just like there is a conspiracy out there. It's just not the one that you think, right? And so, if people want to see that, and sometimes, it might be a year before we can actually publish it publicly that we're able to share it. So we want to be able to start sharing that with people.
Good. And we can kind of put it into 1,500 word packets and make it,
Yes.
that's kind of
And
our
that's the
job.
other thing. Yes. Oh, that's the other thing. Yes. So we want to start collaborating with journalists. We want to get, because this is not my profession, right? Like I'm a doctor. I'm like sitting behind a computer. You
got important things to do. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh.
I try to do, as much translation as possible, but this is not what we do professionally, right?
Yeah.
But I want to give you the data, right? I want to be able to deliver it every week. This is what's happening in women's health. These are
boy.
the things that you need to know. So you can share it with people, right? And so it's called the CPN. It's a Clinical Partners Network. And we're inviting people to come to the table with us, because we want you to share this data and we want people to know. Because the whole premise of the Labor Collective is that we can't do this alone. That's like the whole organizational hypothesis, right?
Mhm.
Is that this is something that no VC would fund. And the hypothesis, which people, every time you subscribe, even for free, like you help prove the hypothesis that it can be built with people, right? Like that's the
Yes.
whole premise, is that we don't need external money to do this. We can do this with people. But you have to help me prove it, right? It's not proven because we haven't done it yet. The things that we want to do, we haven't done. And so every time you subscribe and share, that gets us one step closer.
Yeah. Well, we're writers. We know how to do things with no money. So that's good. But and mission is accepted. We're going to help spread these stories. That's the whole objective here. Well, that's been lovely. I think we're at the end here. Like I said, we keeping you've got things, more important things than us. But this has been
Oh, no,
lovely.
this is my focus for the day because this is important. So this is that I want to say like this is very important, because we can again like so much the stuff that we're sharing. I mean, this is not new information. I wish I could even call it research, but it's not. It's literally just reporting.
It's
The things that are
suppressed, though. Yeah, it's
so
deliberately suppressed. And
It's deliberate.
It's the parts of the story that they leave out though, and
that
we
they leave
don't.
out.
Yeah,
some of it is
we gotta
conditioning where
start
we just
putting
don't
the
ask
whole story
questions.
together.
Some of it is
Mhm.
silencing us. But I know my whole life, this is the 51 years of me trying being told, well, you're just not good enough and all these other things. It's like, damn it, they're holding this back. And we're
Yeah.
forcing our way onto the table. And it's just like we're seeing it's all coming to a head right now.
Yeah.
So everybody's just got to be more deliberate because we're sounding the alarm right now. And it's still easier to just pretend it's all right.
One thing. Pick your one thing. That's it. Pick your
Yep.
one thing and then do that thing and really commit to it. That's what everyone has to decide. And so today, the one thing I want everyone to do is say, what is your area? Just pick your one
Yes.
Yep.
thing and then say, I'm going to do it. And you can do it.
Yes. And any action is good action. What doesn't help is sitting around fretting or worrying
Right.
or falling into despair. Do something. And whatever you do is enough. The only thing that is not enough is just worrying without action. So just please. And the more you know, the more powerful you are too. Last thought, Evie?
Fantastic. I really loved this conversation, Dr. Connor. I'm just blown away by how, I don't know, how willing you are, I guess, to have these conversations,
She's
because it
fighting
is
the good
really
fight.
hard to get people to have these kind of talks, It's really hard for people to kind of put themselves out there, and there is a risk anytime people have conversations, especially on social media. So, I just thank you so much. It was so great
Course.
meeting you. I
Course.
love
And
this
I hope
conversation.
hopefully
I
we
hope
can do
there's
more in the
more.
future. Right.
Yeah.
This is the whole goal. We need to get this stuff because this fight is we're just starting this.
Yes.
And
Yes. Like,
things will get
buckle up.
worse. Exactly. That's why I tell people buckle up, right?
Mhm.
You might not know a lot about your local labor and delivery, but in 5 years, when women are having babies on the
Yes.
side of the road, you will.
Yeah.
Yep.
We got to take
Don't let it get there.
Yep. We got to take all the action we can now to save
Yes.
as many as we can to get through it as humanely as possible. And yeah,
Yes.
it's going to take everybody. All right. Well, let's call it good. That's been lovely. All the wonderful people in the chat, thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Connor, Evie, love you guys. Keep doing what you're doing and always reach out. We're only just email away. Thank you so much. We'll leave you
Bye.
like
Bye,
that.
everybody.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.